Hello everyone, back again with movie and tune recap. Today, I'm going to explain an American supernatural horror film from 2014, titled 21 Days. Spoilers ahead, so watch out and take care. In Fillmore, California, Jacob Anderson, his girlfriend Shauna Roberts, and their friend Kurt set out to film a ghost hunting documentary about a reportedly haunted house at 127 Cedar Road. They interview locals, including historian Clarice Johnson, who shares chilling details about the house's dark history. Built in 1890 on an old Native American burial ground, the house has never had long-term residents. Everyone who moved in left within 21 days, abandoning all their belongings. Strangely, every mirror inside was always found covered, and a terrifying rumor suggests that a demonic entity follows former residents wherever they go, preventing them from speaking about their experiences. Among the past residents were Bob and Carolyn Warner, who lived there in 1977. While in the house, their daughter Tricia suddenly became mute, and years later, their son Corey died in a car accident while on his way to be interviewed about the house. Another former resident, Lisa Thompson, experienced a similar tragedy. Her 9-year-old son Jonathan also lost his ability to speak while living there. Hoping to gather first-hand accounts, Jacob, Shauna, and Kurt visit Lisa's home to interview her, but she becomes furious and chases them off her property.
Shit! What the hell?
Later, Shauna attempts to call Carolyn Warner for an interview, but Carolyn angrily yells at her and abruptly hangs up. Armed with a gun for defense, Jacob and his crew plans to stay in the house for 3 weeks to document the experience, and to be the first to stay for the full 21 days. A representative from the bank that owns the property gives them a brief tour, during which they confirm that all the mirrors are covered, just as the locals had said. Outside, Kurt and Shauna search for the Indian burial site and discover strange dream catchers placed in the ground. Despite warnings that the mirrors should remain covered, Jacob removes all the covers. He even hires carpenters to seal him, Kurt, and Shauna inside the house so they cannot leave.
Hey, thanks guys!
On day 1, Kurt sets up surveillance cameras throughout the house, along with an EVP detector to capture any ghostly voices, and a time-lapse camera in an adjacent barn. They also place toys left behind by previous residents around the house and barn, hoping these objects will trigger supernatural activity. That night, while they sleep, unexplained events begin. Doors start to open and close on their own. On day 3, the group finds old photos of previous residents on the wall, and later that night, the EVP detector spikes, and paranormal activity rouses everyone from sleep. On day 5, when they review the camera footage, they notice that a stuffed animal in the barn appears in different positions in consecutive still photos. Meanwhile, Shauna finds a handprint on an inside window above the kitchen sink, leaving the group feeling increasingly uneasy. On day 9, Shauna discovers a box on top of a closet containing old photos of previous residents, including the Samuels family from 1890. The photos are marked with bloody cult symbols that match the shapes of the dream catchers she and Kurt had found outside. Jacob dismisses the finding, insisting that the previous owners must have done it, and assures them that nothing evil or demonic is in the house. However, when Shauna later researches the symbol, she learns that it represents the underworld. That night in the barn, Kurt plays a recording from an EVP session, and they are shocked to hear a ghostly voice saying, "Shauna, come play with us." Shauna goes to the kitchen to check the fingerprints on the window, but she is frightened off when the closet suddenly closes. Paranormal activity continues, with a scythe mysteriously vanishing from the barn only to reappear inside the house, which leaves Shauna increasingly terrified. An argument breaks out between Jacob and Kurt when Jacob accuses Kurt of placing the scythe inside the house to scare them. However, Kurt reminds Jacob that they have all been locked inside the house since day 1. On day 16, the group starts hearing noise from one of the EVP detectors in Jacob's room. With a camera in hand, Jacob investigates the strange sounds and briefly sees figures reflected in a mirror. They then discover more disturbing evidence. Bloody symbols appear on the photos pinned to their project corkboard. Terrified, Shauna wants to leave the house, but Jacob begins to act aggressively toward her. The tension escalates into a physical fight between Jacob and Kurt, and troubled by Jacob's growing aggression, Shauna decides to sleep in Kurt's room. On day 18, after days of silence, Jacob attempts to reconcile with Kurt and Shauna, but they refuse to engage with him. That night, more paranormal activity wakes Jacob and Kurt, leading them to discover blood-covered photos of themselves and Shauna pinned to their project board. Wanting to prevent Shauna from seeing them, Jacob convinces Kurt to burn the pictures. They then check the surveillance cameras, hoping to capture anything unusual. On day 19, the EVP device spikes again, signaling any ghostly activity, and that night, while everyone is asleep, Jonathan Thompson appears on the doorstep. On day 20, Kurt reviews the footage of the boy outside and is horrified to see that Jonathan somehow entered the house despite the doors being locked. Shaken, Shauna calls Clarice Johnson and tells her what they saw, but Clarice reveals a chilling truth: Jonathan and his mother, Lisa, died in a car accident around the time he supposedly visited the house. As paranormal activity intensifies, objects moving on their own, bloody symbols appearing throughout the house, Kurt insists they need to leave immediately. Shauna agrees. However, Jacob, who is now fully unhinged, pulls out his gun and forces them to stay until the 21-day experiment is complete. In the kitchen, Kurt tries to calm Shauna down when suddenly, an EVP detector begins to spike again. At the same time, Jacob is visited by a ghostly presence in his bedroom. Alarmed by the noise, Shauna and Kurt go to investigate and are horrified to see a vision of Trisha Warner sitting in a rocking chair. The sight leaves them shaken, but before they can react, an unseen force rushes toward them, and terrified, they hide under a table while Shauna frantically calls for help. Shauna dials Carolyn Warner to tell her that she just saw Trisha, only to receive a shocking news: Trisha died 1 hour earlier. Before hanging up, Carolyn urgently warns Shauna to put the covers back on the mirrors, and suddenly, the power goes out, plunging the house into darkness. Navigating through the dark, Kurt attempts to break a window to escape but fails, and as panic sets in, he and Shauna rush to cover the mirrors as instructed. While checking the surveillance monitors, they see ghosts surrounding Jacob in his bedroom. They try to warn him, but before they can act, the furniture around them starts moving violently. In the bedroom, Jacob suddenly becomes possessed, and now armed with the scythe that mysteriously reappeared, he turns on Kurt and breaks his neck supernaturally, killing him instantly. Now completely alone, Shauna flees upstairs and hides under a bed while whispering prayers, and just then, a group of ghosts drags her out, pulling her into the darkness. The next day, the bank representative arrives at the house with cameraman Carl to check on Jacob, Shauna, and Kurt. However, they find the house completely empty, with no sign of the three friends. As Carl films the scene, he moves cautiously through the house, documenting the eerie silence. While exploring, he notices a covered mirror and out of curiosity, pulls the cover away. The reflection reveals something horrifying: ghostly figures standing silently behind him, and the movie concludes. Okay guys, that's all the recap about 21 Days from 2014. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.